We've reversed the order of speaking because we thought it wouldn't be fair on Mr. Sarna for him to address us without gaining a sense of what we did through the day. I think we had very rich discussions in the different panels and really a lot of focus on future direction. So it's not going to be a summary of what everyone said. It's not going to be a quantitative listing of the different proposals that came on the table, but rather a qualitative assessment of the broad themes that we covered in our discussions and the reactions that we had from the participants, especially the younger African participants who are studying in Indian institutions. That was very useful by way of an input into where we go from here and how we proceed in our cultural interaction in particular. So the first thing that I'd like to mention is the last issue that we discussed was the bridging the psychological hiatus that exists between India and Africa, which somehow has developed because of the lack of a cultural connect between India and Africa in a way. And although we are developing connectivity, we are developing trade and investment ties, there is the hardware of connectivity which we considered in the last session. And I think Dr. Mehta reminded us that there is the non-IT software which must supplement the hardware of the infrastructure. That's equally important. And we do need greater public education in India and more cultural exchanges, perhaps even changes in the curriculum in schools and in universities to make Indians more aware of the external world, in particular Africa. Also, there was this interesting discussion on diasporic activism, and I think we need to exercise care in how we address foreign audiences, particularly from our missions in Africa. A greater PD, public diplomacy outreach, is something that was spoken about. Reaching out to strategic decision makers, but also opinion makers in the media, legislators, and generally the informed public in the areas where we are represented. A most useful idea came from the discussions which the earlier one on trade and investment, which was chaired by Dr. Gokarn, where we stressed the importance of looking at specificities of a heterogeneous Africa, the need to take into account social and economic conditions that prevail in different regions, sub-regions, but also in individual countries in developing partnerships and developing businesses. Another idea that came out was that, and this is for the private sector in particular, that African consumers are very quality conscious, and in trying to take appropriate technology to Africa, we should not be taking low quality products. On security, in the first session, there were some interesting ideas. Two of them I thought were particularly relevant. There needs to be more imaginative planning for greater engagement in creating defense capabilities and defense capacities and extending capabilities through military diplomacy, through training, through exercises, and also significantly through assets creation. And another interesting idea came in the context of our UN peacekeeping operations, where we discovered that our military units, on their own initiative through regimental funding, have been working on very small people connect programs, which are small development projects, which are quick gestation, quickly implemented. We need to dovetail our own development partnership programs with the presence of the peacekeeping units. Because one thing which distinguishes Indian peacekeepers from other countries is the openness with which the medical facilities are extended to the local population, the free mixing with local communities, and the type of help that they have been trying to extend through their own resources. And I think the Ministry of External Affairs needs to be inventive in working with the Ministry of Defense in this area. And finally, this idea that came up in our earlier discussions, the one which was convened by Brookings India, where participants spoke of the need for a funding mechanism. And this funding mechanism in that context was spoken of in the context of assistance to investment support. But in our context, we had a wider appeal for special funding or special mechanisms, for instance, for the cultural connect. So these are some of the few ideas that were articulated very cogently and also quite emotionally, and that's why I think we had a productive day, all of us. And I think going by Delhi audiences and the think tank meetings that I have attended over the past year, at the end of the day, we have a significant number of participants still in the room. In the morning, we were overflowing a little bit, and we had to bring in some extra chairs. So thank you all for your presence, and most of all for your active participation. And now I have the pleasure to invite Mr. Navtej Sarna to take the floor.
Good evening, friends. Thank you very much, Jayant, for those introductory remarks which have brought me into this session which you have been having since the morning. And may I also thank the other co-organizers from Brookings, RIS and CII for putting together this event. In fact, we'll all see the summit now. We're not very far from the summit and the official part. But what has really been truly exciting about the last 1 month is the build-up. And it all sort of is beginning to come together in the way that we had aspired for and hoped for when we started planning for this visit, for the summit, that there would be several meetings which would spread the word of India-Africa, not only in India, but in today's globalized communication age, into the thinking societies all around the world. So we've had at least 3 major academic sessions like this one. And I must thank the think tank community for showing so much enthusiasm, preparation, bringing in expertise from different parts of the country, and actually producing excellent material in the shape of these books, which 2 of which were, I understand, launched this morning. We've already got one from Brookings, India, and these are hopefully precursors to regular outflow of work on Africa, which is going to be part of the, at least as practitioners, this is something which we would be extremely keen to have inputs into decision making, into actually enlightened and researched decision making. I think you have talked of the future directions, and the summit is going to be largely about that, I would like to think, because the African Union and the African constituent members of the African Union have been giving a lot of thought to the partnerships that they have with several countries, some of which were started much earlier than the structured India-Africa Forum Summit in 2008. We go back to 1990, 1993, 3 as far as other African partnerships are concerned. And from what I understand, the African Union is in the process of examining each one of these partnerships in detail, in assessing what has been achieved, what is right, what is wrong, so that Africa is simply not a recipient continent that every partner can come and say, okay, here is what I can offer, but also an active interlocutor in which they say that this is what we really don't need, thank you very much, and this is what we need, so can you do a bit more of this, and this is what we can give. So it's a two-way interactive process at which I think the future of these partnerships will be. And interestingly, the India-Africa Forum Summit that's here next week is the first of the summits in which this kind of analytical approach to the partnership is being followed. This is something which we have appreciated and which I think we have been part of now when we have been preparing the documents for the summit. We've been very conscious of it, as I've had occasion to say earlier, that we have tried to hew very closely to Agenda 2063, which is really what the African vision at the moment is. And also the other developments on the global landscape. And here the summit comes at a particularly propitious moment because you have the SDG, the Sustainable Development Agenda 2030, just adopted. You have the Financing for Development conference which has just taken place. You have our summit. Then you have the COP21. And then you have the WTO Ministerial. So all in the space of 2 months or 2.5 months, you have all of this. And if you go back just a little bit, maybe a year, you also have conferences on landlocked developed countries, conferences on SIGs, all of which have brought out issues on which India has been extremely aware of its commonalities with Africa, and which Africa has also been aware that India is both a partner and a supporter in all these activities. So there's a lot of commonality as far as the present approach to development is concerned. So without going too much into the past and history and of our engagement, which all of you in this audience doesn't need repetition of that, I think we have done well to concentrate on the future directions. Some of the things which you mentioned, I think I am particularly glad because normally we tend to look at these things in very broad strategic, political, economic terms. But I think the people-to-people connect, which you brought up right up front, I think is extremely, extremely important because frankly, ultimately it's all about people. And particularly in the Indian approach towards Africa, engagement with Africa, I think the center of our focus has been the human being. And if we are lacking in energy in terms of people-to-people connect, then there will be problems. So I think we have to make an extra effort to, whether it's public diplomacy or whether it is media or whether it is engagement through parliamentarians or students. I think all the more we do, the better we are. Let's not forget that at any given time we have 15,000 students from Africa in India. And that is why we have managed since the beginning of the structured process in 2008 to actually extend 40,000 scholarships to students from Africa. And yes, how we engage with these students and how we make sure that their experience in India becomes something which grows as a bond between India and Africa in the years to come is something which we all need to concentrate on. And we've had some very excellent examples. We have several leaders in Africa who have spent time in India. We recently had the president of Mozambique here, who was extremely keen to go back to the Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad, and he did, to a rousing welcome and a great function out there. Since he had done a short training course there, and he wanted to meet his old teacher and he wanted to meet his old friends. And when we managed to put that together, it was clear where his heart was. And I mean, for any diplomat, you can't have a greater advantage than a leader of another country who is so warmly attached to us in fundamental emotional ways. I think this is something, I'm glad this has been the focus of one of your discussions today, not to mention, of course, the diaspora and the sensitivities in how we approach the engagement with the diaspora, and the diaspora as citizens of both countries in one way, citizens and origins from another country. We've seen these in many countries, and in Africa it's a great asset, frankly. 2.7 million people in the Indian diaspora will definitely be an advantage. The appropriateness of trade, I think, was the third point you mentioned. When I say appropriateness of trade and, of course, investment, I think we have to be very much alive that Africa is green, and let's keep it that way. And I think so. I think when we are talking of sustainable developments, I think we have to be very conscious that we are simply not there to invest, to make money in any which way for our industry, or to develop, to put technology simply because it is cheaper. I think the green part of the technology that we try to bring to Africa, whether in terms of agriculture, which is a crying need for Africa, in terms of smart mechanization of farms, in terms of energy, in terms of power structures. I think the green element of this energy, if we are talking of sustainable development to 2030 and trying to remove all the problems that we have of poverty, literacy, housing, etc. by that age, I think this is something which we'll have to concentrate on. Security was, I think, the major point you mentioned. The peace and security is again very much on the
Rick's.
May I call upon Mr. Pranav Kumar to take the floor from the CII.
Technology, energy, education, culture, etc. Now we are just a week away from this historic event, as Ambassador Sarna has mentioned, and we are indeed very grateful for his presence today. In fact, he was with us at the first event which was held last month, and this is perhaps not perhaps, in fact, definitely the last event before in the build-up to the India-Africa Forum Summit, which is next week. And during the summit, some various events are planned which are being held, and CII is a part of that. So we are all looking forward to this historic event and hoping that this will lead to India-Africa relations to a greater height. I would like to thank Ambassador Sarna, and in the morning session we had Ambassador Sujata Mehta, Ambassador from Ethiopia, and other distinguished diplomats from India and African nations, and we are really very grateful to them for their presence and contributions in discussions and thoughts they have expressed. Before I conclude, let me just also say that in the entire day we have been talking, and Ambassador Sarna mentioned about that analytical approach to this partnership and in terms of building the agenda for this Forum Summit. And that is indeed a very welcome step, and we are all very grateful to the Government of India for having involved the multi-stakeholder partnership to build the agenda. And we have done our best to contribute in terms of building the agenda for the India-Africa Forum Summit. And when we talk about India-Africa partnership and complementarity, let me just give one thought that if we go to the pre-crisis period, pre-2008, during that period, both India and Africa, we were dependent upon West, United States of America and European countries for market, for investment, for developmental aid. But post-crisis period, the emergence of countries like India and other emerging economies, now both India and Africa, their complementarity has further increased. Indian private sector is looking towards Africa more for market, for investment. India is also trying to scale up its developmental cooperation with Africa. African countries are more welcoming towards India in terms of seeking investment from India, in terms of seeking market access in India. Our own duty-free tariff difference scheme, which was launched during the first India-Africa Forum Summit, that has been further amended and improved in terms of providing market access to Africa. So we are going in a very right direction, and we are in a very focused manner looking towards building this relationship and taking this relationship to a better height. So lastly, before I conclude, let me just thank all the distinguished participants who sat through the day, as Ambassador Prasad has mentioned, and that really helped in our discussion, and we are indeed very grateful and thankful for your all valuable contribution. And last but not least, Ambassador Prasad, who just recently took over as Chief of the Indian IDSA, and we are looking towards to work under your guidance as well for future program. Thank you.
Thank you, Pranav. So with this, the day's program is concluded. Wish you all a very pleasant evening.